Hey guys, thanks for watching. In this video, we're going to be changing out a dented garage door panel. It's a common occurrence whether you've forgotten your car was in drive and drove right into your garage door or rammed it with your snowblower. Either way, we're going to show you how to replace a panel, which is a much cheaper alternative than going with a whole new garage door. I purchased mine from a local garage door supplier. It took about 4 weeks to arrive, and it's the exact model that I have currently. You'll just need to provide them with the serial number you can easily find on the back of your garage door. It cost me 370 Canadian, which is 270 US, and it included all of the trim pieces. You can see compared to the previous trim piece that's all grimy and moldy, definitely a worthy upgrade to change the trim around your door. And the price of 370 Canadian, 270 US might seem hefty, but this is the bottom panel, which also includes the weather stripping along the bottom, and my door is insulated. So if you don't have an insulated garage door, expect to pay even less for your replacement. When ordering your panel, you're going to be given the option to purchase the mounting hardware for that panel. I chose not to. I'm going to reuse all the hardware from the old panel, and that'll be an easy swap because the new panel has pilot holes marked for exactly where you want to install the previous hardware. I'm going to show you just how simple it is to change the garage door panel and hopefully give you the confidence to do it yourself, because a lot of online forums and garage door companies are going to try and scare you away and force you to pay the big bucks to have them come and do it, because they're going to reference the torsion spring and how dangerous it is to work with and how important it is to safely remove the load, the torsion load, off of your garage door before you start working on it. But I'll show you just how simple it is to do and safe to do as long as you take the proper steps. And minimal tools required, including a very cheap homemade version from Home Depot of the winding bars that you'll require. I'll show you how to make them a little bit further down the video. And for now, I'm going to start with doing the trim pieces. So if you want to skip right ahead to the garage door, go ahead. We're going to start with replacing the trim pieces. To remove the trim pieces, you'll just enter a screwdriver to pop out the trim piece from the center channel to expose the screws, and it's just as simple as removing the screws from the trim piece. The new trim piece is going to come much longer than your old ones, so you'll just have to line them up, butt them up evenly at the end, and make a pencil mark where your old one ends and cut it with a handsaw. I went and pulled the rubber gasket away from the cut line on the plastic trim because I'll be cutting the rubber gasket later on with an X-Acto knife. Once you've cut the plastic portion of the trim piece to length, I pull the rubber gasket so that it protrudes out on either end. There's definitely enough length for that, because the factory cuts are not nice at all. So I have extra sticking out where with an X-Acto I can trim off either end nice and clean. And then all that's left to do is screw the trim pieces in place, preferably with a second set of hands to get the top portion installed. Now that the trim is in place, it's time to get this panel onto the garage door. I only need to replace the number 1 panel, but I'll also demonstrate what you would do if you were replacing the number 1 and the number 2 panels, because sometimes they both get dented at the same time. And super simple, guys. Doesn't take up many tools. You're just going to need 4 vice grips and some torsion bars, some winding bars. It's impossible to find these winding bars at a local hardware store. You can get them online, but a garage door company will charge you upwards near $60 for these things. I found them on Amazon for $20, or you can make your own for 15 Canadian, 10 US dollars by buying one 36-inch length steel bar at Home Depot. You want to get a 1/2 inch diameter. Cut it in half. All you need is a basic hacksaw. You're left with 2 16-inch lengths, exactly what you'd find online at a garage door company. I went ahead, put hockey tape for grip on the handles because you don't want them slipping out while you're working with them. Then I used electrical tape at the ends to mark where the bar gets fully inserted. This exposed bar portion is the amount that gets inserted into the tension spring. So I know that as long as this all disappears, my bar is fully inserted. You want to make sure, because if you're working quick and you only insert it halfway, it's not really a whole lot of real estate into the spring, and there's a lot of tension on them. You don't want them slipping out. So for safety, you always want to make sure you insert these bars as much as you can into the spring. You require a pair of them, and they're going to be used to insert up here into the torsion spring and take load off of the garage door. The first thing we're going to do to get started is pull the rope release so the garage door disconnects from the opener, turns it into manual mode, and we're going to find our handle, open the garage door just like so, enough to get a foot underneath, and then you're going to take your first vice grip and right underneath one of the rollers, clamp to the track, and this will allow the vice grip to prop the door open for you. Now I've clamped underneath this roller because I'm only replacing panel number 1. If you're replacing panel number 1 and 2, you want to have your vice grip up to the next roller. You want it clamped underneath a roller that's not involved in the replacement. Repeat on the other side with another set of vice grips, like so. And the last 2 vice grips are going to be used to clamp onto the cables on either side of your garage door. You don't want them too tight so they flatten and distort the cable out of shape, just enough so they hang on and add weight to the cable. This is going to keep the cable nice and snugly fitted on the drum, or else when we release the tension from the coil spring, your cable might lose its place, and they're set inside a specific groove on that drum, and it just makes life a lot easier to have that weight on the cable so it all stays the way it should while you're working down here on the door. And with the last set of vice grips, we're going to repeat the same thing on the other cable, and we're all done. Now time to remove the bolts from the garage door panel that we're going to replace. In my case, all the bolts that I'll be removing are a 7/16 inch socket. And don't worry, now you might be thinking the minute you remove the bolts from the hinges, that panel's going to just drop to the ground because it's propped up off. But no, that panel's being held up by those cables hanging on the side. They attach at the bottom of the bottom panel. That's holding it up. And that cable is connected to the torsion bar. We're going to lower the garage door panel in the next step. You'll see that when we use the winding bars, but for now, rest assured you can remove all the bolts on the hinge above the panel you're going to replace and not worry about the garage door slamming to the ground. We're going to remove just the bottom bolts on the hinge. I'm replacing panel 1. If you're replacing panel 1 and 2, then you would be removing the bolts. First of all, your vice grip would be up on that next roller, and you'd be removing the bottom portion bolts of these hinges. Let them fall to the ground. Just make sure you account for all your bolts. Lift the hinge up out of the way. Again, count for all your bolts. Lift the hinge up out of the way. Voila, it's completely unbolted, but as I mentioned, the panel's not falling to the ground. It's being held up by the cables. While I've got my drill in hand, I'm also going to unscrew the foot plate because I'll be reusing that on the new panel. Remove the foot plate, but nothing else. Do not remove these bottom brackets, these bottom roller brackets from the panel until we release tension off of the cable from our torsion bars up here. Once the tension is relieved and there's slack in the cable back here, we can safely remove the bottom roller mounts because that cable that's under tension is currently hooked on to the bottom bracket, and a lot of tension is placed on them right now. If you remove these 3 bolts, this piece of metal will go shooting up and maybe even in your face. So don't remove that. That's the one part where people make it sound scary about removing a garage door panel by yourself. It's not scary, just don't unfasten the bottom bracket until, I'll show you right now how to do it, we remove tension off of the cable. So removing tension from the spring is a two-handed operation. I'll set the phone up on the tripod and record me doing it. But just to get in close and show you what we're working with, there's 4 insertion points along the diameter of the coil spring. And the bar fits in like so. And you can see when it's fully inserted, how I mentioned earlier, the tape helps greatly in knowing that the bar is fully inserted, because once all the exposed metal disappears, you know you went in all the way and you didn't only half insert the bar. We want to make sure full insertion so the bar doesn't slip out while it's under load. I'll show you exactly what's going to happen when we release the tension. I'm going to push up on the bar, and when you do that, the door, the bottom panel that's unbolted, is going to slowly lower. You can see the gap of light getting bigger and bigger, and the more we unwind or release tension from the spring, the more the bottom panel will lower to the ground. And the process will be lowering the panel until it's touching the ground, and a little bit more after that to release the tension off of the cable. So there's some slack. Here we are in real time with both winding bars. I have the stack of bricks. I also have a trusted companion on the outside, making sure that bottom panel doesn't fall out once it starts to lower. And one turn at a time, quarter turn, we're going to lift up on the first bar, insert the next bar once the insertion point becomes exposed, remove the top bar. We can rest that bar on the garage door if we want to change grip. Lift up again on the lower bar, and as you can see, the door is lowering. I feel like there's even slack in the cable now. And once that insertion point becomes exposed and there's clearance to get the bar back in, the next bar goes in and we can lower it slightly back down, placing the tension on the door so we can take a break. So it just took 3 rotations, 3/4 turns of giving slack for the door to fall and for there to be lots of slack in the cable, allowing us to unhook it from this roller attachment panel here. So with the cables detached, I unscrewed the roller plates at the bottom and I took out the old panel. It's super easy, self-explanatory. I've set the new one back in, and I'm going to line up these little divot pilot holes. They're down here as well with the holes in the mounting plate, and screw them in. I've got somebody on the outside. You can see those legs keeping the door from falling outward, and I got some bricks making sure it doesn't fall inward while I work. We'll get these screwed in on both ends and then reattach the cable. All right, so I've reattached the bottom plates with the rollers and hooked back the cables down below. I'm not sure if you can see the hook. The cables are here still with lots of slack. So the next step is to go ahead and unwind the bars back, which will lower that, raise the bottom panel and have it mate up here. The grooves should align nicely so we can reattach the 3 hinges. I'll start raising it. You won't see any movement in the garage door for the first couple of turns until now the cord's got some slack. You're gonna hold it from falling out?
Yeah.
Okay. and I got my foot so it doesn't fall in. Now this last one, looks like they're mating. That worked perfectly. I lowered it down and they mated perfectly together. We can go ahead, screw in the hinges. I even screwed the bottom foot plate. Now all that's left to do is remove the vice grips. Get your foot underneath, lift up on the door, take the weight off of the rollers. One vice grip is off. Second vice grip is off. Don't forget the vice grips adding weight to the rollers, and then taking the foot out, the door lowers to the ground. I think I got one more. Yeah, one more vice grip on that cable. All 4 vice grips accounted for. The door is installed. Well, there you have it. Hopefully you enjoyed this video and it gave you the confidence to take on this job yourself. If it did, please like and subscribe. That would be awesome. I really appreciate it. It'd be great to see those subscriber numbers go up. And now that you made your own winding bars and you have the confidence taking tension off of that spring, check out my next video where I'm going to show you how to properly counterbalance your garage door by adding more torsion onto that spring, because it's the spring that's supposed to do most of the heavy lifting for your garage door opener. When your garage door opener is disconnected, you should be able to lift your garage door with the ease of a finger and not lift a heavy garage door with your muscles. If that's the case with your garage door, you don't have it balanced properly. I'll link the video right here at the end so you can watch it and balance your garage door, put extra life on your garage door opener. All right, I'll see you guys in the next video.